Presentation of dialogue on Idaho Public Television is made possible through the generous support of the Laura Moore Cunningham Foundation, committed to fulfilling the Moore family's legacy of building the great state of Idaho.
Every year, on the 4th of August, I close the curtains of my home and do not answer the doorbell and the telephone. It is the day that my Jewish friends were taken away. I have never overcome that shock.
Coming up next on Dialogue, we honor the memory of Anne Frank with a look back at a Boise speech by one of her protectors, Miep Gies, the woman who also saved Anne's now famous diary. That's Dialogue next. Stay tuned. Hello and welcome to Dialogue. I'm Marcia Franklin here at the Anne Frank Memorial in Boise. This is the only memorial to Anne Frank in the country. Human rights advocates came up with the idea for the site at a nearby Human Rights Center in 1995 after more than 45,000 people attended an exhibit about Anne in Boise. Idaho, they figured, had a rich opportunity to combat the stigma created when the Aryan Nations hate group located their headquarters in the state. During the fundraising for the memorial, which opened in 2002, Boise received a visit by one of the main protectors of the Frank family, Miep Gies. It was Gies who also saved Anne's diary after she and her family were arrested in August 1944. Anne died in March 1945 in the Bergen-Belsen concentration camp, only 2 months before it was liberated. In her speech, Miep talked about why she was compelled to help the Frank family, what Anne was like, and what she tells people who still continue to deny that the Holocaust happened.
People often ask why I found the courage to help the Franks. Yes, it certainly takes some courage, some discipline, and also some sacrifice to do your human duty. But that is true for so many things in life. Therefore, this question always surprises me because I simply cannot think of doing anything else. So why do people ask this question? Step by step, I started to understand that many people wonder why they should assist other people, because when we are young, most of us are told by parents that if we act all right, life will work out fine for us. So, if people have a problem, they must have made a serious mistake. Why should we then help them? I, however, helped because I don't believe that people who are in trouble did something wrong. I knew that from my own life. I remember that at the age of 9, I did not get enough food. I still feel the pain of being hungry. I also remember the shock that I had to leave my home in Vienna to go to Holland in order to overcome a very serious illness. Did I deserve to be that sick? No. I had not done anything wrong. So, very young, I knew that you can be in trouble without that you can be blamed for that. I felt the same to be true for the Franks family. Therefore, whatever others would think or say, I had to help. There was also another reason to do such. Many children grew up in families where they are told to mind their own business only. When those children become adults, they tend to look the other way if people ask for help. However, I myself lived in Holland with very social-minded foster parents. They had already 5 children themselves and had to live from a modern salary, but still took me, a very sick child, in their home. Whatever they had, they would always share with others. It made a deep impression on me. It made me feel I should do the same in my life. In my opinion, education is very important. Many children will live and talk the way their parents and teachers do, which at the same time is a warning to all of us. For instance, many children hear their parents and their teachers speak about the Asian, the blacks, the whites, the Jews, the Asians, the Arabs, whatever. That is very dangerous because lumping groups of people together make children grow up with the feeling that all members of those groups think and act the same. However, it is racism to think that all Jews, all Arabs, all Asians are the same. Once in Germany, parents did not tell their children to always look at everybody else as a single person. This made it very easy for Hitler, and therefore many Germans gave Hitler the help he needed to kill 6 million Jews. Children should be warned for a weakness many people have. It is blaming other people for unpleasant things happening to us, even if it's our own mistake. All the time Anne Frank was born, Germany was in deep trouble and very poor. Hitler, who wanted to come to power and who knew how much we like to blame other people for our problems, offered the Germans a scapegoat, the Jew, and therefore millions of Germans gratefully voted for Hitler. Step by step, the happiness and life of all Jews was destroyed. Many people all over the world looked the other way because they thought it was safer not to help the Jews. However, at the end, not just 6 million Jews were killed, but 10 times that number of non-Jews were dead as well. Therefore, if we allow this to happen to our neighbor, there is no guarantee that it will stop at our doorstep. I feel very strongly that we cannot wait for our leaders to make this world a better place. No. We ourselves should make this happen now, in our homes and in our schools. We should never forget the victims of the Holocaust. I myself always think of the family Frank, the family Van Daan, and the dentist Dussel. Van Daan and Dussel were the names Anne gave them. The true names were Van Pels and Pfeffer. Also the helpers got other names from Anne, except for me. Why did she decide to use my own name? The answer I will never receive, but it touches me very much. What me struck most about Anne was her curiosity. She asked me always about everything that went on outside. And not only that, she knew that I had just married, and therefore she hoped that I would tell her more about being so close with another person. Well, I did not yield to that. Anne felt very strongly about her privacy. When I once entered the room where she was writing her diary. From her eyes, I saw that she got angry. Maybe she thought I was spying on her, which was not true, of course. However, usually Anne was a friendly and also very charming girl. I say girl, but talking to her gave me the surprising feeling of speaking to a much older person. No wonder, because the situation made Anne grow up very quickly from child to young adult. In the first place, the children in hiding had a hard time. They missed so much. They could not play outdoors and could not meet with friends. They could hardly move. We did all the possible to help them, but freedom we could not give them. This was one of the most painful things for us. Every year, on the 4th of August, I close the curtains of my home and do not answer the doorbell and the telephone. It is the day that my Jewish friends were taken away. I have never overcome that shock. I loved and admired them so much. 2 years, they had to live with 8 people in a small place. They had little food and were not allowed to go out. They could not speak to their friends and family. On the top of that came the fear, every hour of the day. I have no word to describe these people who were still always friendly and grateful. Yes, I do have a word, heroes. True heroes there were. People sometimes call me a hero. I don't like it, because people should never think that you have to be a very special person to help those who need you. I myself, I'm just a very common person. I simply had no choice. I could foresee many, many sleepless nights and a life filled with regret if I would refuse to help the Franks. And this was not the kind of life I was looking forward to. I could not save Anne's life. However, I did save her diary, and by that I could help her most important dream to come true. In her family, she tells us that she wants to live on after her death. Now, her diary makes her really living on in a most powerful way. And that helps me in those many hours of deep grief. When I found it, lying all over the floor in the hiding place, I decided to stow it away in order to give it back to Anne when she would return. I wanted to see her smile and hear her say, "Oh, my diary." But after a terrible time of waiting and hoping, word came that Anne had died. At that moment, I went to Otto Frank, Anne's father, the only one of the family who had survived, and gave him Anne's diary. "This is what Anne has left," I said to him. "These are her words." Can you see how this man looked at me? Lost his wife, lost his 2 children. He had the diary of Anne. It was a very moving moment. Otto told me to read the diary. But in the beginning, I refused because I was afraid that it gave me more pain. But when I finally started to read it, all my dear friends came back to life again. I heard their voices, their laughs, their arguments. It was really wonderful. Of course, I wept a lot while reading, but in fact, I felt happy. Anne and all the other people were with me again. "Thank you, Anne," I said often to myself. "You gave me one of the finest things I ever received." As I told you, I'm born an Austrian girl. For a long time, I was deeply ashamed of my home country. My biggest joy was on the day that I became a Dutch citizen. Then I felt free to hate all Germans and Austrians because of what they did do to my friends. I could not see that there was anything wrong with that. However, it was wrong. And as you will see, I learned that the hard way. After the war, the business of Otto Frank, where I worked in the office, was still in the same building where he had been in hiding. After the diary was published, people started to visit the place, also Germans and Austrians. Otto knew about my blind hate towards them, and therefore he would never let me near them. Yeah. But one day, fate caught me. When I suddenly faced Germans, I jumped at them, calling them everything I could think of. Sie sagen immer, wir haben es nicht gewusst. I shouted, "You always say that you did not know what happened to the Jews. You really want me to believe that you were that stupid." Yeah. The visitors were clearly afraid of me and backed off to the wall. I also saw that the wives were taking position in front of their husbands, trying to protect them from my violent outburst. I really had my go at them. In a certain way, I even enjoyed it. But then, I was told that these German people had been many years in concentration camps themselves for opposing Hitler. Can you understand how how I then felt? And can you see me standing there? I really did not know where to look or what to say and how to make good for it. At that moment, I started to understand the wisdom of Otto Frank, who always said that we should never and never lump people together. Every person makes his or her own decision, Otto said. Even parents and their children do not act and think the same. Otto felt very strongly that we should not make the same mistake many Germans once made. As I explained earlier, German children were never told that everyone is just a single person. And so Hitler got the help he needed to kill 6 million innocent Jews. Lumping people together is racism, Otto said. It did lead to the Holocaust and still destroys countless lives today. It does happen that people walk up to me and ask me what I would answer to those who deny that the Holocaust ever took place. My response is that on August 4, 1944, at 9 o'clock in the morning, I did meet a healthy and strong 50-year-old girl, Anne Frank. The next thing I saw was her name in a German list of people on a cattle train to Auschwitz. So please, tell me where Anne Frank lives at this moment, if the Holocaust did not take place, because Anne Frank would still be with us today, 67 years old, on June 12 this year. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you with all my heart for spending your time with me. Once again, thank you all. It was really wonderful.
Miep Gies died in 2010, 1 month shy of her 100th birthday. During the fundraising for the memorial and the Human Rights Center, several other people with connections to the Frank family visited Boise. They included Cor Sauk, the former director of the Anne Frank House, and Hannah Pick Gosselaar, a childhood friend of Anne Frank's. Both were on Dialogue in the 1990s. Here are some clips from our conversations. You were friends with Anne Frank for many years. In fact, you were at her birthday party when she was given the autograph book that would later become the diary. She really loved to write from an early age, didn't she?
She wrote already much before, a long time before. I remember in the breaks between the classes, she would sit like this, shielding her notebook and always writing. And so I don't know what did she write, because when we asked her, what are you writing? The answer was, it's none of your business.
And she's been described as having kind of a spicy,
spicy little
character.
girl.
And your mother has a famous phrase that I've heard you
My mother would
say
describe
before.
Anne, and she would say, God knows everything. Anne knows everything better. And this really describes her.
Amazingly, Hannah Pick Gosselaar was incarcerated in the Bergen-Belsen concentration camp at the same time as Anne Frank. She was able to talk with Anne just 1 month before she died.
And after some minutes, I hear somebody calling for me, and it was Anne.
And she was very different from the young woman.
It was not the Anne I had known. It was really not the same girl, a little broken girl. First thing I asked her, what are you doing here? I hoped you are in freedom. And then she answered me, they even didn't try to go to Switzerland, that they wouldn't have made it. And they were in hiding in her daddy's office, and they were betrayed.
You tried to get her some food.
Afterwards, first we spoke about the families, and you know, Anna always, she had long hair and she always liked to curl it. So then, even we had no time to speak, she told me, I have no hair. For her, that was very, very important. And we spoke about the family. I told her about my little sister, that's okay, and that was really a miracle. And that my father is dying, he died 2 weeks later. And my mother died before by childbirth. She also didn't know, only about the baby. And she answers me, I have nobody. And you know, that's not true, but she couldn't know.
Right, her father had in fact been already liberated from Auschwitz.
And we didn't know anything about liberation and nothing. And I think if she would have known her father is alive, maybe she had a little bit more hope, because it was still almost the end of the war. I'm obliged to tell about the Holocaust, because the younger people are not remembering anything, and the older ones are not with us anymore. So as long as I can, now I'm retired, I have to do this.
I need to ask you though, of all the years you spent in Amsterdam, obviously walking in the house where Anne Frank and her family stayed, and being there alone, I assume sometimes, what kind of feeling is it there when you're alone, sometimes knowing the history?
I must disclose something. When Otto Frank asked me to become the treasurer of the Anne Frank House, it took me about, although I was the director, 4 years before I dared to enter that place. And I recognized this as the embarrassment. Many of us, even if I'm looked at as a person who have been trying to help Jews, I can't forget that so many people of that segment of society I'm part of, the Christians, have failed to do the right thing. So it was for me a most emotional experience when I entered the hiding place. Nobody knew that I hadn't been there, because I was the director. I could just enter the place anytime I wanted. But I was fearing a shock, and again it came as a shock. I came to the house, and I walked through it alone, and then all of a sudden I saw entries Otto Frank had made on the wallpaper. He was measuring up his children from time to time. And so you could see how they had been developing in height during that period. And at that very moment I felt I had to leave the place. I could hardly, because in our presence, under our eyes, we tolerated, although I should not take that too personal for me, but still I felt in our presence, and we have done too little. We should have done a lot more.
Cor Sauk died in 2014. Hannah Pitt-Goslar lives in Israel. She's the same age as Anne Frank would be if she were still alive. To watch my full conversations with the two of them, check out the Dialogue website. Just go to idahoptv.org and click on Dialogue. For Dialogue, I'm Marcia Franklin. Thanks for tuning in.
Presentation of Dialogue on Idaho Public Television is made possible through the generous support of the Laura Moore Cunningham Foundation, committed to fulfilling the Moore family's legacy of building the great state of Idaho.